Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for more Southwest adventures. Please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. For new videos, hit the notification bell. Relax and enjoy. Welcome to today's episode of Southwest Desert, where we delve into the untold stories of America's Southwest history. Today, we're taking you back to the rugged terrain of New Mexico in the year 1860, to a place where the echoes of a long-forgotten massacre still resonate through the pines of the Chuska Mountains. Our story begins with a tantalizing claim that there is only one man who knew the true account of the bloody event that unfolded in those mountains over 160 years ago. His name is Naltsos Nalyai, the son of the Navajo chief who led his warriors against Mexican slave raiders in a dramatic encounter that would come to be known as the Mountain Massacre. He told this story in the 1930s. Please forgive any mispronunciations in the following story. As we begin our journey into this tale, it's important to note that the events we're about to describe come directly from Naltsos Nalyai's own words, as told to Richard Van Valkenburg. This first-hand account gives us a rare glimpse into a pivotal moment in Navajo history, one that has been passed down through generations. Let's set the scene. It's 1860, and tensions between the Navajo people and Mexican settlers are at a boiling point. For decades, Mexican slave raids have been a constant threat to Navajo communities, with women and children being kidnapped and sold into slavery. The Navajo, understandably, are hungry for revenge. Our story begins in the season the Navajo call Reeds Flowered. Word spreads through the Navajo camps like wildfire. A large group of armed Mexicans is making its way westward, guided by enemy Navajo from Sandoval's band at Ceboleta. The news sends a ripple of activity through the camps. Nataliath, the war singer, begins to prepare his medicine, a crucial part of the spiritual preparation for battle. Meanwhile, the Navajo warriors start patching their thick buckskin shirts and sharpening their lances. As they work, they boast about how they'll deal with the Mexican coyotes, their voices filled with a mixture of bravado and anticipation. This eagerness for battle isn't just about the immediate threat. It's deeply rooted in the collective memory of the Navajo people. Naltsos Nalyai tells us that the old-time Navajo were always hungry for blood revenge, their minds never far from the massacre of their kinsmen in the cave in the Canon del Muerto. This reference to a past atrocity gives us a glimpse into the cycle of violence that had shaped relations between the Navajo and Mexican settlers. As the Mexican party advances, Navajo scouts keep a watchful eye on their progress. They report that the Mexicans are following the Great Navajo Trail, a route that today is partially covered by a railroad. The invaders pass through Cubero, navigate the treacherous lava beds, and make their way up the valley of La Agua Azul. Near Fort Wingate, they turn north, passing through an area known as La Mesa de los Coyotes. When the Mexican party makes camp at a spring in the foothills near Nascbiti, or the Place of the Badger, their intentions become clear to the Navajo. It's evident that they're planning to raid the Navajo summer camps near Todilquil Bejequid. In response, the Navajo elders quickly mobilize, sending women and children along with their precious sheep to hide in the deep canyons of the Tsigi to the west. Guided by their Navajo enemies, the Mexican party finds the horse trail leading to the top of the mountain. As night falls, their campfires encircle the shores of Bejequid Beneji, the Long Lake, which the Mexicans refer to as La Laguna Grande. It's a scene of deceptive tranquility, for in the black shadows just beyond the glow of the campfires, Naltsos Nalyai's father and his warriors are preparing for battle, fletching their war bows in anticipation of the coming conflict. Before dawn breaks, the Mexican party breaks camp. Like wolves seeking to surprise their prey, they move out early. But little do they know, they're walking into a carefully laid trap. Hidden in the dense forest, Navajo warriors skirt their flanks and rear, positioning themselves for the ambush to come. As the red sun of Jobatiabai rises from behind the blue ridge of the mountains, the Mexican party rides directly into the Navajo trap. The location is perfect, a valley pinched in by two oak-covered spurs, leaving the Mexicans with little room to maneuver. The silence of the early morning is broken by a signal from Naltsos Nalyai's father to Nataliath, the war singer. The Bathli, or war leader, gives the signal, the gobble of Taji, the wild turkey. It's a sound that would have been familiar to all present, but in this context, it carries a chilling new meaning. In an instant, the peaceful mountain scene erupts into chaos. From three directions, the singing war arrows of the Dine, as the Navajo call themselves, pour into the Mexican ranks. The air is filled with the whoops of Navajo warriors as they crash through the thickets, their lances lowered for the charge. Caught by surprise, the Mexicans react in panic. They beat their plunging horses, trying to escape the deadly trap. But as Naltsos Nalyai describes it, they're being herded like jadi, the antelope, into a hunting corral with no outlet. He compares them to Mei, their coyote brothers, running to find a hole to sneak into. Just before reaching Totoquil Behekid, the Mexican party makes a desperate move. They swerve off the trail and take refuge on a rocky hill. Working quickly, they construct a makeshift fort using logs and stones. It's a defensive position, but one that will soon prove futile. The Navajo warriors, covered by trees and rocks, creep close to the Mexican position. In a display of psychological warfare, they begin to taunt their enemies. "Naksai Ida, oh ho, old Mexicans," they call out. "You'll all be dead. Pretty soon the girls over at Cubero will be crying." It's a chilling prophecy of what's to come. The battle rages on throughout the afternoon. Navajo arrows bring down the Mexican horses, their screams echoing through the mountain valley. 7 Navajo warriors fall in the fighting, their deaths only serving to fuel the desire for revenge among their kinsmen. As the sun begins to set, its light described poetically by Naltsos Nalyai as blood-speckled, his father initiates a clever tactic to break the Mexican defenses. Along with a warrior known as Hashkenezi, or the Long Warrior, he sneaks behind a smooth log lying on the slope below the Mexican position. They create a diversion, yelling and making noise to draw the Mexicans' attention. As the Mexicans focus on the commotion below, firing their muskets at the log, something else is happening. Like the mountain lion, the Navajo warriors creep in from the sides. The forest is eerily quiet, with only the summer song of the gentle breeze people playing on the mountaintop. Suddenly, the stillness is shattered by the staccato gobble of Taji, the wild turkey, the signal to attack. Naltsos Nalyai's father and Hashkenezi charge the Mexican position, running in a zigzag pattern to avoid the musket balls whistling around them. At the same moment, the hidden Navajo warriors strike from the sides, described vividly as a stroke of male lightning. The final assault is swift and brutal. Navajo warriors swarm over the cornered Mexicans, their lances and knives flashing in the fading light. The majority of the Mexicans are killed behind their hastily constructed breastworks. A few manage to break away, fleeing through the forest like rabbits, but they're quickly run down by mounted Navajo warriors. The battle ends as quickly as it began. Before the blue smoke of gunpowder has a chance to drift up through the pines, the ground is covered with the bodies of the fallen Mexicans. In a grim postscript to the battle, a wounded man is discovered under the pile of bodies. He's recognized as Jose, an enemy Navajo who had guided the Mexican party. His fate is sealed on the spot, killed for his perceived treachery. With the battle over, the Navajo turn to the task of honoring their fallen. They lay their dead kinsmen in crevices and cover them with rocks, a simple but respectful burial in the harsh mountain terrain. The aftermath of the battle extends beyond the immediate cleanup. Naltsos Nalyai tells us that the tribe later held a swaying dance, a purification ritual for the warriors who had taken scalps in the battle. Medicine men ascended the mountain to collect enemy bones, which were wrapped in ceremonial bundles. This practice, we're told, continues to this day, with Navajo Hathli, or medicine men, returning to the site to collect bones for the Anajihi, or enemy way ceremony, which the white men call the squaw dance. As Naltsos Nalyai concludes his account, he brings us back to the time when he shared this story with Richard van Valkenburg. He describes revisiting the site of the battle with his father just 2 years before the old chief's death in 1892. It's a poignant detail that underscores the personal connection Naltsos Nalyai has to this history. Van Valkenburg explores the battle site with Naltsos Nalyai. They climb to the top of the knoll where the final stand took place. The scene that greets them is a stark reminder of the violence that occurred there decades earlier. The breastworks built by the Mexicans have crumbled, now just lichen-covered stones and rotted logs scattered across the Malpais Rim. Under the trees lie the scattered skeletons of many horses, grim testament to the animals that fell in the battle. Mixed among these larger bones, Van Valkenburg notices smaller ones, human vertebrae. It's a chilling discovery that brings home the reality of the massacre. It's a sobering sight, one that Van Valkenburg describes with a mixture of queasiness and a notable lack of pity. As they leave the mountain valley, Van Valkenburg reflects on the broader historical context of the massacre. He notes that the Navajos' actions, brutal as they were, came in response to decades of provocation. He specifically mentions the massacre of some 100 Navajo women and children in Canon del Muerto in 1805. An atrocity that marked the beginning of a cycle of violence and retribution. The Mexican slave hunts, Van Valkenburg concludes, could only result in reprisals from the Navajo. It's a stark reminder of the complex and often brutal nature of frontier conflicts, where grievances and acts of violence perpetuated a seemingly endless cycle of revenge. The account of Naltsos Nalyai, passed down through generations and preserved by Richard van Valkenburg, offers us a rare Navajo perspective on these events. It's a narrative that doesn't shy away from the brutality of the conflict, but also provides context for the Navajo actions, rooting them in a history of exploitation and violence at the hands of Mexican slave raiders. This story also highlights the importance of oral history in preserving the perspectives and experiences of indigenous peoples. Without Naltsos Nalyai's account, this event might have been lost to time, or only remembered through the potentially biased accounts of non-native sources. As we've seen, the repercussions of the Mountain Massacre extended far beyond the immediate aftermath of the battle. The site became a place of spiritual significance for the Navajo, tied to important purification rituals and ceremonies. This underscores the deep connection between historical events, landscape, and spiritual practices in Navajo culture. As we end our journey into this dark chapter of New Mexico's past, we're left with a vivid picture of a moment frozen in time, the bones of the fallen still lying beneath the pines of the Chusca Mountains, a silent testament to the brutal realities of frontier life. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Southwest Desert. We hope this exploration of the Mountain Massacre has provided you with a new perspective on this little-known event in American history. Until next time, keep listening for the echoes of the past. They have much to teach us about our present and our future. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where we bring you stories of adventure, mystery, and the untamed Southwest frontier. Today, we're diving into a tale that has captivated the imagination of prospectors and history buffs for over a century, the legend of Pishlaki, the lost Navajo silver mine. It's the late 1800s, and the American West is still a land of opportunity and danger. The Navajo Nation, spanning parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, holds secrets that few outsiders have ever glimpsed. Among these secrets is a silver deposit so rich that it can be worked straight out of the ground. Our story begins with whispers and rumors. Traders on the fringes of Navajo and Ute territory start noticing something peculiar. The Navajo people are bringing in silver jewelry, bracelets and rings, made from native silver of extraordinary purity. Word of this mysterious silver source begins to spread, reaching the ears of ambitious prospectors dreaming of striking it rich. One such prospector was Jack Merrick, a man working the mines in Colorado. Intrigued by the tales of Navajo silver, Merrick decided to risk it all. He knew the dangers. The Navajo were notoriously hostile to outsiders at the time, but the lure of untold riches was too strong to resist. After carefully preparing and gathering supplies, Merrick set out into Navajo country. For months he searched, always on guard, always watching for signs of the elusive silver deposit. And then, against all odds, he found it. Imagine the excitement Merrick must have felt as he rode into Durango, Colorado, his saddlebags heavy with silver ore. When the assay results came back, they were beyond his wildest dreams. $800 to the ton. In today's money, that's an astronomical sum. Flush with success and eager to extract more of this incredible wealth, Merrick knew he needed help. Enter Mitchell, a 21-year-old fresh-faced youth who had recently arrived out west seeking his fortune. When Merrick offered him the chance to join in on a return trip to the silver mine, Mitchell jumped at the opportunity. It was 1880, and these two men, separated by years of experience but united in their quest for riches, set out together into the harsh and unforgiving landscape of what we now call Monument Valley. Weeks passed with no word from Merrick and Mitchell. Then, through the intricate network of Native American communication, disturbing news reached the mining camps. The two prospectors had been killed. A well-armed party immediately set out from the Rico mines to investigate. Their destination? The Hogan of Hoskanini, an elderly Navajo chief known for his influence over the northern reservation Indians. Hoskanini was no stranger to conflict with white settlers. He had famously escaped Colonel Kit Carson's roundup of Navajos at Canyon de Chelly in 1863. When confronted, Hoskanini didn't deny knowledge of the murders, but he was quick to absolve his people of blame. According to the chief, it was a band of Utes, led by a warrior known as No Neck, who had committed the crime. Hoskanini led the search party to the scene of the killings. What they found was a grisly sight. Only the bones of Merrick and Mitchell remained, picked clean by coyotes and vultures. Their horses and camp equipment were gone, but tellingly, heavy bags of high-grade silver ore were found at the campsite. The story, as relayed by Hoskanini, was one of sudden violence and desperate flight. The Utes had attacked in the dead of night. Mitchell was killed instantly, but Merrick, though wounded, managed to escape into the darkness. When dawn broke, the Utes tracked him down and finished what they had started. The bones of Merrick and Mitchell were buried near the bases of two prominent buttes in Monument Valley. In a poignant tribute, these natural monuments were named after the ill-fated prospectors. Today, visitors to Monument Valley can see Merrick Butte and Mitchell Mesa standing as silent sentinels to a tragic tale of greed and violence. Fast forward to 1939. Charles Kelly, a historian from Torrey, Utah, traveled to Monument Valley to interview Hoskanini Begay, the son of the old chief who had died in 1912. Now 81 years old, Hoskanini Begay confirmed the existence of Pish Laki, the legendary silver mine. According to the chief's son, only 7 Navajos had ever known the location of Pish Laki, with his father being the last. He spoke of another Navajo who, on his deathbed, had tried to pass the secret to his son, but the knowledge was lost. Hoskanini Bege's account highlights a fundamental difference between the Navajo worldview and that of the white prospectors. For most Navajos, the earth was sacred, life-giving. The idea of mining, of tearing minerals from the ground, was seen as a violation of their religious beliefs. This cultural divide adds another layer of complexity to the legend of Pishlaki. It wasn't just a hidden treasure. It was a secret protected by both physical isolation and spiritual taboo. Now, let's fast forward to the mid-20th century and introduce a new character to our story, Harry Goulding. Goulding ran a trading post in Monument Valley and had spent much of his life among the Navajo. He was known for his fair dealings and was deeply respected by the local community. Goulding believed in the legend of Pishlaki. Over the years, through conversations with a Navajo man we'll call Hosteen Yazi, not his real name, Goulding became convinced that the mine still existed, hidden somewhere in the vast expanse of northern Arizona or southern Utah. Years passed and Hosteen Yazi's family fell on hard times. They were struggling to put food on the table. It was then that Goulding made a proposition. He would provide pack animals and supplies for Yazi to go to the mine alone and bring back enough silver to feed his family. At first, Yazi was reluctant. The curse of the gods weighed heavily on his mind, but as his family's situation worsened, he finally agreed to Goulding's plan. Picture the scene: a string of pack burros, loaded with supplies, setting out from Goulding's trading post early one fall morning. Hosteen Yazi, likely feeling a mix of hope and trepidation, leading them into the wilderness. Days passed. The weather turned foul, cold, and rainy. Goulding worried about his friend but hoped for the best. 6 days after setting out, Hosteen Yazi staggered back to the trading post. He was alone, without pack animals or supplies. His body was racked with coughing, and fear haunted his eyes. In his native Navajo, which Goulding understood fluently, Yazi told a tale of divine retribution. The gods, he said, were angry. They had sent bitter cold winds that numbed his extremities and drenched him with rain. Flash floods had filled the arroyos, blocking his path. Goulding did what he could for his friend. He and his wife Mike put Yazi to bed and cared for him. When the weather cleared, Goulding went out and recovered the pack animals and what was left of the supplies. But Hosteen Yazi didn't bounce back quickly. His cough persisted, and more than that, he was deeply troubled. In his mind, he had angered the gods, and now he was paying the price. Understanding the depth of Yazi's spiritual crisis, Goulding took action. He called in Navajo medicine men to perform a sing, a traditional healing ceremony, for his friend. This wasn't a small undertaking. The ceremony cost Goulding over $100, a significant sum at the time. And so we come to the end of our tale, but not to the end of the legend. Somewhere out there, among the towering mesas and deep canyons of Navajo country, the silver of Pishlaki may still lie hidden. Harry Goulding believed it until the day he died, though he never again tried to find it. The story of Pishlaki is more than just a tale of lost treasure. It's a story about the clash of cultures, the power of belief, and the enduring mysteries of the American West. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest treasures are not meant to be found, but to inspire our imaginations and fuel our sense of wonder. As we look out over the breathtaking landscapes of Monument Valley, we can't help but wonder, what other secrets might these ancient lands hold? And perhaps more importantly, should some secrets remain undiscovered, protected by the very land that holds them? This has been Southwest Desert. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Navajo country and the enigma of the lost silver mine. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and remember, the greatest adventures are often the ones that remain just out of reach. Welcome to this episode of the Southwest Desert on the Navajo Long March, a tragic episode in the history of the American Southwest. Today, we'll be exploring this event through the eyes of a survivor, providing a unique perspective on this often overlooked chapter of American history. In 1863, the United States government, in an effort to end conflicts between the Navajo people and surrounding tribes and white settlers, embarked on a campaign to forcibly relocate the Navajo. Kit Carson, a famous frontiersman, was tasked with leading this operation. With 800 New Mexican volunteers under his command, Carson set out to round up all Navajo tribesmen. The campaign was thorough and brutal. The Navajo were forced to march 800 miles from their ancestral lands in Canyon de Chelly to Fort Sumner, where they were interned for 4 years. This forced relocation, known as the Long Walk, ended with the signing of a treaty in 1868. Our story today comes from one of the few survivors of that Long March. At the time of these events, he was a 12-year-old boy known as Very Slim Man. His account provides a vivid, personal perspective on this dark chapter of history. In the fall of 1863, news reached the Navajo that danger was approaching. The head chief, Barbonchito, sent messengers throughout Navajo land warning of impending doom. White soldiers, guided by Mexicans and Utes, were entering Navajo territory. Very Slim Man recalls the fateful morning when he first spotted the invaders. While on his morning run, shaking snow from juniper branches, he saw a long line of men and horses moving northward across the valley. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he alerted his father, and they quickly broke camp to seek refuge in Canyon de Chelly. As the family traveled through the night, they witnessed the destruction of their homeland. Very Slim Man remembers seeing ragged red streaks in the pitch-black valley, their fields and hogans burning. Just before dawn, they reached the rim of Canyon de Chelly. Believing they had found safety, they began their descent down the treacherous ladder trail. However, their relief was short-lived. As they reached the first ledge, gunfire erupted from above. Blue-clad soldiers had ambushed them. In the chaos that followed, Very Slim Man lost most of his family. He and his little sister were the only survivors. For 3 days, they hid in a small wind cave, surviving on water from moss in a small seepage. On the 4th day, a man named Klagi found the children and informed them that the soldiers had destroyed everything in the canyon. Many Navajo were fleeing westward to hide on Black Mountain. Under the cover of darkness, Klagi led the children out of the canyon and towards Black Mountain. Upon reaching their destination, they found many other Navajo refugees. After much debate, the group decided to surrender rather than risk starvation. As they made their way towards Fort Defiance, they encountered a group of hostile Mexicans. However, an American captain intervened, claiming the Navajo as his captives and escorting them to Fort Defiance. At Fort Defiance, over 2,000 Navajo were gathered in one large camp. Very Slim Man remembers the taunting of Zuni and Ute dancers, bragging about their role in the Navajo's defeat. One winter day, with snow up to the horses' fetlocks, the order came to move out. The wagon train and walking Navajo stretched out like a great black snake in the snow. Very Slim Man noted the confusing behavior of the soldiers, who could be ruthless one day and kind to Navajo children the next. The Navajo were marched eastward, passing through present-day Gallup and Fort Wingate. At San Rafael, then known as Warm Spring, they received their first rations of beef. It was here that the Navajo also encountered flour for the first time, not knowing how to prepare it and attempting to eat it raw. The journey continued along the Rio San Jose, past Cubero and Laguna Pueblo, until they reached the Rio Grande at Isleta Pueblo. Crossing the swollen river proved perilous. Very Slim Man nearly drowned but managed to cling to a log and survive, losing everything except his breechcloth and a small medicine pouch tied around his neck. After many days of travel, the Navajo arrived at their destination along the Pecos River. Fort Sumner was established in 1864 by President Abraham Lincoln as a reservation for both the Navajo and the Mescalero Apache. Life at Fort Sumner was extremely difficult. The water was poor, firewood was scarce, and attempts at farming were thwarted by grasshoppers and hot winds. Disease, particularly smallpox, ravaged the population. Very Slim Man recalls the heartbreaking sight of coyotes scavenging the bodies of the dead as the living were too weak to bury them properly. Despite the hardships, some young Navajo men, including Very Slim Man, occasionally snuck away to raid neighboring tribes like the Mescalero Apache and Comanche. These raids were driven by hunger and a desire for mischief. Very Slim Man recounts a particularly harrowing experience during one such raid. After stealing horses from the Comanche, he and his companions were pursued. In the ensuing chaos, Very Slim Man was thrown from his horse and narrowly escaped death by playing dead as the Comanche passed. He was later found by American soldiers who marveled at his luck in escaping with his scalp intact. In 1868, after 4 years of captivity, a council was held at Fort Sumner. A delegation from Washington arrived, and after lengthy negotiations with Navajo leaders including Barboncito, the Treaty of 1868 was signed. This agreement allowed the Navajo to return to their homeland. Very Slim Man, along with many others, left Fort Sumner the day before the treaty was officially signed. They made their way back to Navajo land, staying near Fort Defiance until they received sheep as part of the treaty agreements. Upon returning to his family's old camp at horizontal White Rock Point, Very Slim Man found destruction and loss. The Hogans were burned, and their hidden possessions had been taken by weather and wildlife. All he had left were the clothes on his back, 3 sheep, and the small medicine bag that had been with him throughout his ordeal. Unable to stay in a place filled with painful memories, Very Slim Man and other returning Navajos settled in the Chinle area. For the next 68 years, he would make his home on a knoll in this region. The story of Very Slim Man and the Navajo Long Walk is a poignant reminder of the complex and often tragic history of Native American peoples in the United States. It highlights the resilience of the Navajo people in the face of tremendous adversity and the lasting impact of government policies on indigenous communities. The Long Walk and the years of internment at Fort Sumner remain a defining moment in Navajo history. The Treaty of 1868, which allowed for their return, is still considered by many Navajo as their foundational document, akin to a tribal constitution. As we conclude this episode, let's reflect on the words of Very Slim Man regarding his cherished medicine pouch. Now you can understand why I never could part with this thing that saved my life 4 times on my long walk to Huelt. This small object, carried through unimaginable hardships, serves as a powerful symbol of survival, resilience, and the enduring spirit of the Navajo people. It reminds us that history is not just about dates and events, but about the life experiences of individuals caught in its currents. The story of the Navajo Long Walk, as told through the eyes of Very Slim Man, offers us a deeply personal window into a pivotal moment in American history. It challenges us to consider the human cost of past policies and the strength required to survive and rebuild in their wake. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the Navajo Long March. We hope this episode has provided you with new insights into this important chapter of history and the resilience of the human spirit. I hope you enjoyed this Southwest journey. If you would like to help support my channel and time, hit the Super Thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. This is very helpful. See you next time. Happy trails.